Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine is certainly not going as he intended. But on the home front, his dreams may be coming true. That was the thrust of a terrific New York Times article by the paper's Moscow reporters, Valerie Hopkins and Anton Troyanovsky. Valerie joins me now from Moscow. Welcome, Valerie. I want to ask you to start by talking about something that I found very interesting in reporting you've done before this article, but including this article, which is President Biden has said a couple of times, I think, once the body bags start coming back, the Russian people will stop supporting this war, or words to that effect. And what you found is that the body bags are coming back, but it is actually increasing the support for the war. Explain what's going on.
Well, thank you very much, Fareed, for having me. And I wish I didn't have to talk about this with you today, but it's true. In my reporting across Russia, what I've found when talking to people, mothers of those who have been lost or relatives, people are finding that their losses are actually making them support the war even more. They're starting to feel it even more. And of course, the Kremlin has refused to actually release the full statistical data of how many people have been killed, how many soldiers have died in this war. They've only released them intermittently, and I believe the last full count was in September at 6,000, while Western intelligence estimates that there have been 200,000 killed and wounded in this war, Russians only. So of course, most Russians don't know the full extent of this, but my reporting and reporting by other colleagues who remain in Russia and who have spoken to the mothers and relatives of these dead soldiers find that that this makes them support it even more because they feel a concrete sense of loss. They do believe the propaganda that the government has been pushing not only for the past year but also before, but it has really ramped up this year, is that the West seeks to destroy Russia, and this is an existential struggle for Russia's survival against the West. And they also are increasingly buying the line that actually the West was preparing an invasion, and that Putin was smart to preemptively invade Ukraine. It's quite surprising and quite shocking, but this is where we are right now, 1 year in.
You talk also about a much broader transformation that is taking place in Russia. I mean, this goes back a long way, the debate in Russia between the kind of Westernizers and what used to be called the Slavophiles, people who thought Russia's destiny lies with the West, and those who said, no, Russia is its own distinct, unique creature. You say that this war has helped almost finally, in a very decisive way, move that debate in one direction, right?
Absolutely. Well, as you read in the article, one of the businessmen very close to President Putin, Konstantin Malafeyev, expressed his joy that this war, he expressed some degree of pleasure, we can say, about the fact that this war continues as long as it did. As you know, initially when this was planned, it was planned as a blitzkrieg. They thought they could take Kyiv in 3 days, change the government and just occupy. But instead, this has required a societal transformation. And Konstantin Malafeyev, this businessman, said this is great because, if the blitzkrieg had succeeded, we would still have these liberal elements of our society. But now that the longer it goes on, the more this changes into the society that Putin wants. The more liberals are either silenced or forced to flee, the more free speech is suppressed, and the more it's possible to create educational, cultural institutions and even civil society into the type of organizations and bodies that the Kremlin wants to see, which are traditional, conservative, and essentially define themselves as the antithesis to the values that the West professes to stand for.
So, in a sense, it feels to me like what you're saying, the longer this war goes on, don't expect Russia to feel, that it's, oh my goodness, it's a big mistake. It's actually having the effect of making Russians double down on this anti-Western narrative and anti-Western society.
On the one hand, yes, I think, in the near term, that is the case. But I think what we've learned from Russia's experience with other wars. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan was something that many people were frustrated about and opposed to. But it didn't. It took them years to organize and to truly be fed up and frustrated. I think a lot of this is actually apathy, and much of that is due to the fact that the economy has sort of more or less remains normal. But it's possible that at a certain point there may be some tipping point. It's just how far along that might be. It's really hard to say.